What time is it? It's Packard Folks at time. Hat? Check. Shirt? Check. Pants? Optional. Mug? Double check. Check us out at cafepress.com/PackardPokesat where you can get all this great merchandise and more.
Do you like Packard Pokesat and want to hear it on demand and on the go? Download the free app today at Stitcher.com. Available on iOS, Android, Nook, and iPad.
This is Packard Pokesat, and I'm poking at your news. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another fine edition of Packard Pokesat. I'm your immutable and unmutable host, Packard Sonic. And join me tonight from the far East Coast is the Atheist Ranger.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And joining me from the ill that is Illinois is Matt, Not a Believer 71.
Hello, everybody.
We got an interesting discussion tonight for our Okay, Let's Talk. If you're an atheist and you have someone in your family die or a friend pass away, and sometimes you're the only atheist in that community, or at least your little community of family or friends, and you have to deal with the people who believe all around you. And that's our discussion topic tonight, is how to be a non-believer and deal with death and cope in a believer's world. So let's get started with the conversation. Matt, we kind of, when we were discussing this topic, we were going to bring this up, that you said that you have had a few people that had passed away recently, and you, since it being a non-believer, how are you cope with it?
Well, sometimes it can be uncomfortable because, I mean, nobody in my family knows that I'm an atheist.
Okay.
But, if I'm at a church, it's a little uncomfortable, especially when you're trying to kind of hide it.
Yeah. What's really sad about that is that the fact is that we have to hide being an atheist, especially then,
Well, I have an uncle who's an atheist.
Okay.
So I'm not the only one in the family. I've never talked to my uncle about it, but, it's just nobody says anything about it. So I just choose not to tell people that I'm an atheist.
Have you talked to your uncle and told him, or?
No. Told me that he was an atheist long time ago.
Maybe time to reach out to him. I'm just saying, that's just my.
Yeah. I never really thought about it, but
I've been to several funerals in the last several years, and the people that were around me didn't know I was an atheist at the time. And recently one of my sisters passed away, and they didn't have a funeral. They had just like the wake afterwards, how everybody just gets together and there's like food and people sit around and chit chat and whatnot. And I did talk to a few people about that, and my family seems to be, they're kind of more my extended family, actually. They seem to be a little bit more okay with it. I mean, they didn't like harangue me or anything like that, which I found was actually pretty decent. But one of the funerals I went to was for a friend of mine. His dad passed away, and him and his brother, none of them had known that I was an atheist at the time. And I had gotten up, I had made a speech because, since they were in such a bad place mentally, and I could understand why. But the fact is that after everything was said and done, I didn't discuss being an atheist at the podium, because I thought, there's a time and place to pick your battles, and that's the one place I didn't feel I needed to. I didn't express it in any way. I just discussed, the person I thought he was, difference between when I was a kid to now being an adult and everything like that. And the response was very positive from what I said. But later on, and this is a very common thing here in the United States, that you have the wake, everybody gets together, has some food or whatever. And one of the places which is very popular here, is going to like a bar, for example, because it's cheap place to rent out or whatnot. And while I was there, somebody that was a patron of the bar at the time, he wasn't involved with the funeral at all. He wasn't at the funeral. But his former wife and this guy were having a conversation, and they were talking about God and whatnot, and it made me uncomfortable. I could have said something, but I didn't at that point. And there was things I wanted to say, but I didn't, because the fact is, it wasn't the time and place to have that conversation. And being the only atheist there, I didn't feel safe, because a bar, beer, alcohol and whatnot, so.
Yeah, also it does spell trouble.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's a good place to get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So comment from the chat room here from Deconverted Man. Thank you for your comment. comment. He says mortality sucks. That is all. So yeah, it is. It does suck. It does suck. So yeah, it sucks a big it sucks the big weenie, as it were. But I've dealt with death on more than one occasion. I didn't come out as an atheist myself until well after my mother had passed away. It brought more questions for me anyway. So I was already having questions, and then after that, that just kind of put me over the edge on that point. Matt, you said you had some other situations for yourself that you were talking about earlier.
Not that I recall.
Okay, I could have swore you did. Tony, I'm sorry, I'm dominating the conversation here. Have you had any experiences with being a non-believer and having to go to funerals or whatnot, or dealing with people who have passed away?
Well, luckily for me, anyone who knows my story knows I don't come from a very religious family. Not to say there's not any religious people in my family, there are, but I haven't gone to that many funerals. The last funeral I went to was, I think, 8 years ago, because my aunt died of cancer. She died of breast cancer. And here's the thing with me and funerals, I don't like looking at the body because, and this may sound very dumb to some of you, very cowardly, but I don't like looking at dead bodies because I know quite obviously that's going to be me one day.
That's not cowardly. I don't see that as cowardly at all. I mean, we all have to face our mortality, and you already know that's going to be you someday. And I think that's, you're trying to distance yourself from that thought. I don't see that as a problem. I mean, when my mother passed away, it was very difficult for me. One thing I'd never done before, and I hope I never have to again, but when my mother had passed away, I actually kissed her on the forehead. I leaned into the casket and I kissed her on her forehead. I've never kissed a corpse before, but that was the first and hopefully the last time. But
I'm sure she liked it too.
I'm sure she did. I kissed her on her forehead. I didn't like get in there with a full tongue, No,
it's fine. But I think but the last funeral I went to, my father was actually got pissed at me because I wouldn't go see the body. I'm like, 8 years ago, I was like 16, 17. Like a 16 and 17-year-old doesn't want to see a dead body.
No, not unless it's out in the wilderness and you got a stick. I'm just
exactly
saying. Yeah.
Him and I just got into it. I'm like, hey, me staring at dead bodies makes me uncomfortable. Like, why would you make me do that? So, I mean, just not to cause a scene, I just went up there, just stared at my aunt's decomposed body for 30 seconds and just left and went to go sit in my seat. And I think that's what's, for me, that's what's most scary as a non-believer is that, let me be very clear, in our personal opinions, once we're dead, that's it. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's most scary of all, dealing with death as a non-believer. Just that, as far as we know, this is all we have.
Right.
Well, I think what kind of gets me is that, I have to say, well, at least they're in a better place. And I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
I've had theists tell me that before. And when people say that they're in a better place, and I have to tell them no, because the better place is here alive with us, being able to experience and be with each other. And you pointed it out there, Matt, that we don't know what's going to happen to us, or maybe it was Tony. Me. There's Tony. I apologize. We don't know what's going to happen to us after we die. Nobody knows. And
no, we don't.
People guess and they make religions around it and whatnot. But the fact is that as far as we know, that's it. That is completely it. We're just gone. There's nothing beyond that point.
Me and my dad have actually talked about this before when it comes to an afterlife, because my dad's an atheist as well, although he's not as outspoken as I am. But me and my dad actually agree. For the sake of non-believers, I hope we are wrong. I hope there is, I wouldn't say a heaven or a hell, but I hope there is a life after this one, so we can, possibly see our loved ones again.
I wouldn't want to do that myself. That's me, of course, because the fact is, I look at it like, think of the one thing that you like to do. Let's go for the heaven example. There's one thing that you really, really enjoy doing, but you get bored with it eventually, right? Now imagine having to only be able to do that one thing, or everything that you've ever wanted to do for eternity, and there's no end to it. You would become so bored with that because there would be no end to it. I mean, the way I look at it, I'm experiencing stuff now. I get to experience the fear of driving down the road sometimes and, a deer jumps out in front of you or something like that. I mean, it's like, that because you get the feel, you're feeling a thing because it's real. If I were to live forever, after I die, and knowing that nothing I do has of any consequence, then it makes everything I do after that point completely meaningless, because we bring meaning to ourselves and in the world when we're here. And going back to when I said that when people say they're in a better place, I don't see that as a better place, because the better place, again, the better places would be here with us, not laying in the ground being worm food.
Yeah, I've never had anyone, well, at least I have never had a family member say that to me, but when I've told people that, you know, my aunt died or something, you know, I did have like coworkers and friends telling me, you know, oh, she's in a better place. And as much as I shouldn't have said it, I said, okay, well, how do you know? Mm-hmm. And that was the conversation that should have been avoided.
Yeah. We have another comment from the chat room here. Connie, Practical Magic 9. She said, I have to think that viewing the body in the past was a way of confirming that the loved ones or friend is gone and it's just a shell. Very Klingon, very Klingon. But what makes us up is just, you know, the neurons and the electrons and things that are passing around through our brains, you know, keeping things going. And the fact is that those come to a halt, and we're not going to feel anything after we die.
While we are poking at your news, you can poke us at Facebook and Twitter, or poke us with an email at ppapodcast@gmail.com, or leave us a message at 662-709-PPAP. Join us live on YouTube/Packard Pokesat on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time. Be part of the conversation by live chatting with us during the show. Enjoy the show? Help support us by becoming a monthly patron at patreon.com/Packard Pokesat, or look awesome by buying something at cafepress.com/Packard Pokesat. No money, no problem. You can help us by sharing the show with friends and rate us on iTunes and Stitcher. For everyone that shares and rates us, you kick ass.
The Atheists,
the Bible,
and No Wardrobe, the podcast.
Wait a minute. No wardrobe? You mean we're going to be naked while we do this?
Well, seeing how I'm an atheist and I'm reading the Bible, and since clothes are flammable,
fire, fire, fire,
I thought it might be a good idea to take them all off first.
Naked or not, follow along as we read, analyze, and try to keep you from falling asleep as we go through this boring-ass book.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spreaker. Who knows? We may even be on YouTube someday.
To what you were saying earlier, I mean, I'd rather be bored than be non-existent, but that's just me.
No, I understand. I would rather be non-existent, because at that point, for me, boredom would be torture. It'd be an incredible torture. I mean, I've talked to people before about that. I said you get bored. I mean, and there is no end to being that boredom. Think of it like being in a locked room that's white walls, white floor, white ceiling. And because you've done everything, you have nothing else left to do. And if you've done everything that there is to do and there is no feeling to it, the boredom would just be maddening, I would think. And that would be to akin to going to insanity.
Well, it's a good thing I'm already insane then.
I always say, stay insane, no drain on the brain. But
aren't we all insane?
To a point, I would think.
I would have to agree with that.
It's all a matter of opinion on that point. But the fact is that I don't find comfort in saying that they're in a better place. I just don't see comfort in that. I find it especially egregious when it happens to a child and the parents are told, hey, your kid's in a better place. Again, that would be a big no, because that kid should have the ability to grow up and be a productive member of society, if at all possible. So when like a child dies, that's then they're said that people say that to them. That's why I find that very irritating right there.
Here's a question. When it comes to that phrase, you know, they're in a better place, who do you think it's worse to hear from? A friend, a family, or a doctor?
I would say any of them, to be honest.
My personal opinion, I think it would be worse to hear from a doctor.
The reason why I say I would say any of them, but to your point, I would imagine that, you know, you would hope that your doctor would be, you know, hopefully have a little bit more logic to his brain, because he's obviously gone through a lot of schooling and whatnot. And you would think that, you know, he's not going to be like super religious. Unfortunately, those people do exist. And you don't see too many doctors at the funerals of the people who passed away. I mean, at least not to my knowledge anyway. I could be talking out my behind on that one. But why would you say that, it coming from a doctor saying that they're in a better place? Why would that be worse?
Well, because again, from my perspective, most doctors don't know their patients on a personal level, and also I personally don't think that would bring comfort to the the dead patient's family.
I could see that. Because then they would be like, they would be thinking, why wouldn't the doctor do more to save the person? Or I could see why the emotions would be running high at that point for that.
Yeah.
In that instance. We had some more comments from the chat room here from Practical Magic 9. Coming to grips with death was the biggest hurdle I had as an atheist. The notion that I don't know if there is something else beyond this life was very freaky. Death is the last mystery. I hope that maybe there might be more. As for kids, the cruelest homily at a funeral is your child died because God wanted more flowers in his garden. These people should be hooked up to a 12-volt battery to the nether.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree on that point, because the fact is that when you tell a family member or somebody, because your kids passed away, and you say, oh, they're in a better place, or God wanted more flowers, I would say, you know what, your God is a horrible, horrible monster to take a child's life. And one of the other things that always comes back with is that they say, well, you don't know what God's plan is. And I would say that's a bad plan. What purpose would it serve to have a child die before he or she had a chance to grow up to be a productive member of society? There was a number of years ago, this happened in my city, that a girl, she was about 12 years old. She had a mild form of diabetes, but the family wanted to pray over her, and she ended up dying because of that. And it could have been treated, but because of their religion, they decided to just pray over the child and, just put blankets on her or whatever they did to keep her somewhat comfortable, I guess. But she was throwing up and all these other things, and they didn't want to go to the doctors at all, because their religion forbade them to go see doctors. Only after she had literally died on them, then they took her to the doctors, and they weren't able to revive her. That child died a needless death because religion and people who believe that their God's going to heal their children. I'm getting off on a tangent. I'm sorry. But as an atheist, I look at that and I say, what a waste of life. That person could have gone on, and I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself here. That person could have gone on to be who knows what. I mean, that's all right. I apologize. That's a bad argument, because I've heard people, especially like people like Robertson, who go around saying, well, the child died because God knew that person was going to grow up to be the next Hitler or some nonsense. And the fact is it's a bad argument all the way around.
Yeah. And I think I've had that experience once, but because I never met this particular cousin, but there was a cousin of mine. Again, never met him, but his name was Lucas, and he drowned in a pool. And, I told like a close friend about this, and he actually had the audacity to tell me that, well, maybe God was just testing the faith of their parents. I'm like, wait, stop, flip and stop.
Wow.
You're telling me that your God couldn't find another way to test the faith of his parents, besides letting him drown in a pool? Let me tell you something about drowning, dude. Drowning is one of the most painful ways to die.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Okay, and speaking as someone who's, I was a dumb kid. I, did the whole, breath holding contest with my cousins. Yeah, when you are underwater too long, your lungs, they flip and hurt. Okay, so it's just doing the whole breath holding contest under the water. I can imagine that's one painful way to die.
Yeah. That would be very painful. I mean, especially when your lungs are filling up with water. I mean, all that stuff goes into your lungs, and it would be, I'm sure, quite painful. There are people who have swallowed water, had it go into the lungs, and they've been able to be revived. I'm sure those people would be willing to verify, say, hey, yeah, that hurts to have water in your lungs.
Yeah, and my cousin I never met, he was 6 years old.
Another comment from the chat room from Connie. Thank you, Connie. She said that, based on the comment about from Pat Robertson saying that why did God let the child die because the child was going to be next Hitler? She says here, then why didn't God kill Hitler? And I agree. Why, if God knows that Hitler was going to exist, then why didn't he kill him beforehand? Of course, then you get those people that'll say, hey, God let them exist to teach them a lesson, I guess, or something stupid like that. So then your God would be okay with Hitler, not the other way around. So it's a really bad argument to say that the God took the child because reasons,
Oh, real quick. And what about when people are terminally ill and they're suffering?
Right.
And then after they pass on, people say, well, they're not suffering anymore. What about that? I mean,
well, all right, that's an interesting question. I think it's obviously different than when you have to deal with like a child passing away, but I would definitely say that is definitely a different situation. If a person who is experiencing a lot of pain, there are instances where there are people who commit suicide, or there's right to die laws out there, right to die laws rather in some states. And I think this is a thing that's also up in Canada, where you have the right to pass on if you just can't handle it. And if those people are in severe pain and they can't cope with that pain any longer, I think that's a different situation. If you're just like having a bad day, like your dog died and someone dinged your car and you just want to die, that's not a good reason to say, all right, I just want to end it. But if you're in like extreme pain and you know that you're not going to get any better, you absolutely know there is no cure for whatever it is that's ailing you, and then you're just going to either descend into madness or you're just going to become a severe burden on your family. I mean, I'm not saying that being a burden on your family is a good reason to want to kill yourself either, because that's not, at least in my opinion anyway. But I mean, if you're going to be in severe pain, and like I said, if you know that there's not going to be a cure for whatever, and you want to, say, okay, I'm going to, instead of dying a very painful death anyway, just go peacefully, I would say that would be acceptable.
No, I agree. Yeah, I support. I believe it's called doctor assisted suicide.
Yeah, doctor assisted suicide, right? Because there have been cases where some people have actually fought for the right to die because the fact is that they know that they were going to be in severe pain.
Right.
Yeah. I think in most of those cases, I believe it was, cancer patients, like terminally ill cancer patients.
Mm-hmm.
And and what surprises me is that, again, you even have religious people against that.
Yeah.
Like, how is that any of your business?
Exactly. Because I think the fact is that these death cults out there, the religious ones out there, they're all death cults. They all worship a death. They worship the Jesus character or some other character that's died, and they're all death cults. And the fact is that these people who want to, their texts say, if you kill yourself, you don't get to go to the special happy place after you die, because you're trying to say that you get to choose when you die, is trying to outmaneuver God, and to do with your life what you want, which is kind of a dumb argument, because you're already doing with your life what you want. And whether you live or die, it should be up to you, not whether it's up to some imaginary sky wizard say, hey, you have XYZ days to live. That's absurd.
I agree.
Anybody have any last thoughts on this? Matt, what are your last thoughts on dealing with people, religious people in the world, when you have to deal with people who have passed on?
It's kind of like walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, like I said, nobody in my family knows I'm an atheist, so I don't, let it be known. But, I just kind of blend in with everybody, more or less.
Okay. Kind of like, hiding in the crowd.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Atheist Ranger, what are your final thoughts on dealing with death and being an atheist?
Well, when it comes to death, I mean, pretty much what Matt said. Well, somewhat of what Matt said. I mean, going to funerals for atheists, for most of it is walking on eggshells, because we don't want to start an argument in that kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say to any religious people watching this, if you can help it and some of your family members are atheists, please do not go up to them and say, well, that person's in a better place, because that will make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if someone there doesn't want to see the body, don't pressure them, like my father did with me. That's it.
I would agree with that all the way around. As for myself, if you have to deal with family or friends or whatever that at a funeral, pick your battles. And that's not the place to pick your battles. The time to pick those battles is later on. I mean, there's a time and place for everything, and let these people grieve. Their lives are already in a bad place as it is. You don't need to sit there and poke them in the eye, as it were. Not that a lot of it doesn't deserve it, but again, pick your battles and find a better venue to have that discussion later on when your feelings all the way around, or when the feelings for everybody is at a more calm situation and not all running high based on the actions of the day. Alrighty, well, we got to get out of here. I want to thank everybody that came to the live show and contributed in our chat room. And if you'd like to make a donation to the show, go to paypal.me/PackardPokesat, where you can make a donation as little as $1. And it would help me to keep my lights on and a roof over my head. And I really need the assistance right now. I really do. Otherwise, I could be out in the cold. And I would hate to be trying to live in my car right now. So please make a donation over there, or go to PayPal. Go to paypal.me/PackardPokesat, or go to patreon.com/PackardPokesat and make a donation there, or for as little as $1 per episode. So we'll be back on Wednesday, starting first week of October, and next week we have the first Friday of October. We have a guest host, Tucker Drake, from the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. So he'll be joining us. So come and join us then, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. So we'll see you then. And this has been Packard Pokesat. Okay, let's talk.
And that's a wrap.